Hello everyone, Dirk here, and today I'm gonna talk about how I made my trees climbable in my project, and I'm gonna tell you about the thought process and how I did it, and I'm gonna share my code as well so you can try it out for yourself or upgrade the system or just use it in your own projects. Before I started with this project, I did some research into games like Uncharted, Assassin's Creed, and I looked at how they use their climbing system. And the things I took away from that is they actually have some points you can jump to, and they just move the character to that point. So that's the part I actually tried to copy and use for my trees. So basically, I just have a point the player can go to and grab, and then he moves up to the next point and so on. And I'm just gonna show you how I did it. Now that we're in Unreal, I made a little scene with some trees and our player character. And first, I'm gonna show you the result of how I did it, or what I did. I made a tree, and this tree has points in it that you can climb to. So in my case, I just press the active button, and the player will just hang on to the branch. If I move up, he will move up. If I press moving down, he will move down, and so on. What I did to make this happen is actually I created 3 blueprints. I made one for the tree, just to put the objects of the tree together and combine it in one object. In this case, all of the parts of the tree are interactable. That's why there are so many objects. You can make a far more simpler tree and it would work just as fine. And the only thing I did is I created a climbable branch object. And this is another blueprint. In my case, it's hidden because I only want to use the location. But you can change this into an object that will give you a reference point of, oh, this is climbable, or if I find the red wrappings, I know I can interact with it. So this is something you can create or use your own input. I just created a blueprint for those objects as well. So in my case, it's just a sphere with the rendering disabled. You can scroll down to rendering and disable it. And once you have this created, you can just drag and drop it in to your tree object. The only thing you need to do is to move it up or down to the branch you actually want your player to go to. So he is able to know where you need to grab or where you can have your interaction with. This could also work on walls. I haven't tested it out yet, but it should be just as easy to put points on a wall and have your player character know where to move to. So to make the player character move to those locations, I added a collider. In my case, it's called overlap. It's just a big sphere or sphere collider you can add to your player. The only thing this is gonna do is going to check if there are points nearby he can jump to or can climb to. So you just add a sphere or a sphere collider to your player character. You can either drag and drop an empty actor or an empty sphere in your player character, or you can add a component. In my case, I used the sphere. Easy visualization if it was big enough in-game, and I just disabled the visibility. The only thing you need to do after is either create a custom collision or just use the preset overlap all. So it will not collide with anything, it will just sense if it's overlapping with another actor. So for the blueprint, I created some code which will be available in the description down below. And I will just quickly go over it and tell you what it does. So the object you created, or the collision, overlap collision you created on the player character is gonna be one of the main components. And essentially we're just gonna check if it's overlapping with the our created object, which is basically our location we can climb to. So in my case, it's going to be the climbable branch. And I'm just gonna run through the code I made so you know what it does. The code is also available in the description, so you can download it and paste it. So we're essentially just checking if that collider is colliding with our or overlapping with our object we created earlier. In my case, it was just a sphere without rendering, because we are going to use that for our climbing location. We want to run through all those objects because we want to know if you can go up or down and so forth. But first, I just wanted to be able to hang in the tree, so you're able to well, hang there for fun, I guess. So first I'm gonna check if I am already on a branch or not, and if the branch we are checking is the branch we are already on, or in this case the first time we don't have a current branch yet, so it's always going to be a new one. We want to know if it is the closest, so we're going to check with our player location and our minimum distance to see if it is indeed the closest one, because we don't want the player to jump from the ground to the top of the tree in one go. And once we have run through those, we actually have our closest branch. So we're gonna move the player to that position. For this we are going to use the player movement flying, because we don't want gravity to affect the player, because then he would jump up and fall down. But we are going around the move component 2 component. Here is actually the moment you want to put in your variables that will make the player either move from animation sets or play an animation. So in my case, he just plays an animation, and because I don't want the player to move from the branch or be able to move in the air, essentially I just lock the player movement, and then we set our current branch we had earlier. So the next time you run this piece of code or another piece of code, it knows we just moved to a branch. And essentially it's exactly the same for moving up and down, only I created a loop with a break, because every time you press W we want to move up instead of running the code once and we're on top. So then the code changes a little bit, so it's now a for each loop with a break, and we don't want to know anymore if it's the closest one, we just want to know if it's the one above us. And then the code is essentially the same. And again, after the move component or just before, you can interact or input your own animations or your animation sequence. You can also change the overtime or just add a delay at the end if your animation isn't fast enough or it needs to slow down. And going down is exactly the same, only one variable has changed, or input has changed. We instead, if somebody's or some component is above us, we just check if something is below us and so forth. And that's exactly the same for the rest of it. The only part you probably don't see is how you get off the tree, and I'm gonna leave that one open for you to figure out, because it's a pretty easy one. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know if there are some problems, and if you create something beautiful with it, feel free to share it as well. Thanks, bye bye!